Hey, everybody. Welcome to Celebration Bar Review. My name is Jackson Mummy. I'm glad to have you with us today. We're counting down to your bar exam, and we're roughly 92 days before your test. That's the time that you should be looking at this particular message. If you've watched any of my older videos, you might have noticed that for many years there was a picture on the wall behind me of a very special football player. I kept that picture for many years as a reminder of what I want to share with you today. The picture was of a man named John Elway, number 7, the quarterback for the Denver Broncos. And if you're not a big football fan, I know that some of this may not make quite as much sense to you. But if you know anything at all about football, you probably know about Elway, and you know about the Broncos, who were at that time Super Bowl champions. And it's relevant to what I wanted to talk with you about today. For many years, as I was growing up as a kid in Denver, the Denver Broncos were a literally god-awful football team. They wore vertically striped socks, but more importantly, they had no ability to win. They were terrible, awful. And I grew up during most of those years, and many was the Sunday night that I cried myself to sleep listening to the Broncos lose yet another game. But later in their history, and as I got a little bit older, I had the opportunity to be in Denver for a time when a quarterback came along by the name of John Elway. And certainly if you're a football fan, you know who this guy is. He's been inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's clearly one of the most proficient and productive quarterbacks to ever play the game. For many years after retirement, Elway was the general manager of the Denver Broncos, and in that role successfully guided them to another Super Bowl win. To make a long story short, Elway really is one of my sports heroes, if you're allowed to have a sports hero at my age. And the reason that Elway was a hero to me, and this is what's relevant about the bar exam, is that it wasn't necessarily because of his abilities, although they were amazing, or his strengths as a quarterback. What appealed to me about Elway was that this was a guy who went to the Super Bowl 3 times and he got the snot kicked out of him. This is the part of the story people forget. But the Broncos got to the Super Bowl with Elway, and then they just lost. And they didn't lose by a little, they lost by a lot. It was terrible and horrible. And frankly, it was a miracle that when they got to the Super Bowl back in those days. So I suppose to most people, it was a big surprise when they got destroyed in those first games. But along the way, Elway got tagged with the label of being a loser. He was the guy that couldn't win the big game. And that's difficult, if not impossible, for most people to overcome. But Elway had this amazing capacity to rebound from that and to not view himself as a loser. In fact, I don't think he's ever really seen himself in that context. He didn't say to himself, I'm never going to win anything or be anything because I keep losing this big football game. In fact, he kept playing and he kept coming back. And if you know the story, he actually finished his playing career with 2 straight Super Bowl wins. And then as a general manager, he was incredibly successful as well. What I'm saying is that Elway didn't let an imaginary bag of rocks that had been tied on him by the sports writers and the broadcasters and the fans stick to him. And you might say, all right, so what does this have to do with taking the bar? It seems to me that one of the things that happens when results are in at this 90-day point is that in this current environment, more people are failing than passing. And so it's a really hard time for a lot of people. And there are people that come to me that have, I think, that same metaphorical bag of rocks tied around them. They tie it to themselves, and they begin to think of themselves as being losers, simply because they lost the big game, the bar exam. I had a conversation the other day with a man who was thinking about taking the bar exam. He was a very accomplished individual. He was a tax attorney who'd gone to a high-level law school, but many years ago he had taken and failed the New York bar exam, and it was still bothering him years later. And he said, I don't want to think of myself as a failure because of that event. Okay. I think that a lot of you are successful, obviously. That's how you got to be able to take the bar exam. And most people in law school have never failed an exam in their life, certainly not a high-stakes exam. And then you get into the bar exam and perhaps you weren't successful. You failed the exam. You might have prepared inappropriately. Maybe you didn't work hard enough, although that's rarely the problem. But perhaps you just didn't get ready for the test in a way that was going to be productive for you to be successful. And if you failed the exam, the real danger is that you begin to tag yourself as being a failure. So what I told my students this week is that if you're going to be successful on the bar, you've got to believe in yourself. You need the heart of a champion. And I would define Elway as being someone who's emblematic of that. He was a champion on a lot of levels, not just because he had amazing physical abilities, but he really had the heart of a true champion. He refused to give up. He refused to be defined by what had happened to him in the past. I think it would have been pretty easy to just give up and say, look, I made it into 3 Super Bowls, get off my back. He didn't do that. He kept pushing, he got better, and he refused to give up. He expected to succeed. There's nothing I could say that would be as useful or as important as that as you prepare for an exam in 90+ days. You need to have an expectation of success. As you go through this process, if you expect to fail the exam, if you expect to lose, I can tell you that very little you do in the way of studying right now will change any of that. It's distressing to talk to students who say things to me like, I can't pass this exam. I know I can't pass it. I'm no good at taking tests. I freeze up. I can't write essays. I can't take multiple choice tests. What in the world are you doing to yourself? You must change that belief if that's what you've been thinking. And the first thing that you've got to change is your belief in yourself. We've got tools in our course, things like paraliminals and affirmations, and obviously lots of ways to help you get better and stronger at what you're doing. But the real point is that if you don't believe in yourself, it isn't going to have any impact. Too often, we let other people define us. We let externals define us. We let results from standardized tests define us. Or we let what a professor says about us in school define us. Instead of recognizing that to get to the bar exam, you had to be extraordinarily talented and gifted with lots of ability. You had to get through high school and then college. You had to get into law school. You had to get out of law school. Maybe you had to practice for a few years. You must have been in a position of success to be able to take this test in the first place. I don't buy into the language of one of the bar examiners who recently said, bar takers today have less ability than they used to have. I don't think that's fair or true at all. I think bar takers have just as much ability as they ever have had, but the test is tougher, and I think the preparation courses for retakers have been woefully inadequate, at least from the big box bar reviews. On the other hand, we've been successful for over 30 years now. We focus on repeat takers, and we remind them that they are not failures, but successful individuals. We give them the tools to use their abilities to pass the exam, and we refuse to accept that failing a test makes the person a failure. So if you used a big box bar review and you didn't pass, don't blame yourself. Blame the approach that you used. And as you consider what to do over the next 92 days of study, I want you to concentrate on having the heart of a champion, having that belief that you're going to overcome and succeed no matter what obstacles are in your way. I have the privilege of conducting interviews with some of our passing bar students after each exam, and I'm constantly amazed by the hurdles that each one of them have overcome in their own lives in order to pass their tests. If you want some inspiration, check those out. They're just amazing stories, and they're great stories of the different things that people have done to be successful. In football, Elway had a lot of obstacles. He had a really bad football team for most of his career, but then he got a couple of key players around him, a coach that wasn't a complete idiot, and they had a chance to win. And Elway took advantage of that opportunity when it came along. I think that's a good analogy for what you've got to expect on your exam as well. You have to give yourself a chance to win, a chance to be successful, and then take advantage of that opportunity. Take advantage of good coaching, like we provide, and you won't get knocked down by what happened in the past. If you've never taken a bar exam before, don't think about failing the exam. Think about succeeding. Think about how great it's going to be and what you're going to do after you've passed the test. And if you're a retaker, keep the heart of a champion as your primary thought while you prepare for the test. You'll find that in the next 92 days, things will go a lot more smoothly, a lot more effectively. And the ultimate result for you is more likely to be passing because it's now your expectation rather than something to be dreaded or afraid of. Elway had this enormous capacity to excite the fans. He was great to watch in person, and he drew people to him. He did that for me in large part because he just never gave up. If you're a Denver Bronco fan or a football history fan, you'll remember the drive, Elway leading his team 98 yards to a touchdown with less than 2 minutes left to win the AFC Championship. Now, if you're a Cleveland fan, you don't have quite such fond memories of that moment. But the point is that Elway refused to quit or to give up. And I would tell you, as we head into this 92-day mark, Whether you've just gotten your results and found out you didn't pass, or you're a first-time taker, or maybe you're just coming back to take the bar exam after many years, never give up. Just keep working, just keep pushing, find the right tools and coaching, and you'll get over the top. I look forward to hearing from you as we go along, and I look forward to your comments and thoughts. If you want to know more about Celebration Bar Review and what we do to help people pass the bar exam, I invite you to check out the links on this page. In fact, there's even a link where you can meet with me and discuss your studies as a free study audit. Together, we'll help you discover your champion's heart and put it to good use. Have a great week of study. We'll be back to you again later.